no problem with changing the motion if I can, if the second agrees.
There's no opposition.
No, so moving that to short-term goals. And are there any other comments on the resolution or the motion? Hearing none, I'd call for the vote on the motion.
Voting on the motion to amend to add this item to short-term goals. Lawrence?
Yes.
Paquette?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Palmdale?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
And Chair Jaffa?
Yes.
That amendment is approved. Your main motion is back on the floor.
So are there comments on the main motion? We went through this at our last work session. If there's no comments, I'd call for the vote.
I have a question.
Please.
When we say short-term goals versus long-term goals, what is the time frame that we're thinking when we say short-term? Like within the year, or is it longer than that? Because I don't think it's realistic, given everything else we're doing, to submit a climate action plan to council for adoption under a short-term goal if there's a window of time we're trying to do it within. That's all I'm saying. Because I think some of these other things are going to actually take over.
Well, I would say that the terms are probably very broad and very vague, and I think you could interpret it any way you wanted.
Okay, then we can leave it where it is. That's
In
fine.
my opinion. Any other comments on the motion? To call for the vote on the 2022-001.
As amended. Voting on the approval. Hughes?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Palmdale?
Yes.
Paquette?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Chair Jaffa?
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Okay, so the next item is Resolution 2022-002. This is the Seward Marine Industrial Center Development Plan that was updated and we've worked through in our last couple work sessions. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Lawrence, Paquette, thank you. Is there comments?
I think we did good work on this.
So as I understand it, Madam Clerk, the red line that's in our packet is those changes will all just go to black and the struck out items.
Right, that is correct. All the struck out items will disappear. The red items will turn to black, and that'll become the new plan that we will put forward to council for.
Not at this
Or not
time.
yet.
No, this
At
was
the end of
just
the year.
the yearly update we do, and then after the, I think it's 2022 or 3? 23.
Sorry, 23.
23, then we'll do it again, and then that will go before council to get approved. So we're supposed to update this every year, is what we've been doing, so.
Okay. Are there any comments? So no comments, call for the vote.
Voting on the approval of resolution 2022-002. Paquette?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Palmdale?
Yes.
And Chair Jaffa?
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
So, Madam Clerk, I might be confused. Under item B, I would think the asterisk means that was on the consent agenda, the regular meeting minutes.
That is correct.
All right. So the next item, it would be the elect the chair and vice chair. And if you remember, when the election came up, we were short on the board. And it was my preference to have a short term until we could get more participants. We're still looking for participants from the public, from any source. People have a little time to offer the community. It's an important service. We did have an excellent candidate who unfortunately is a snowbird. Can't blame him for that, but doesn't help us. So with that, I'll open the election, and I think the process would be to elect a chair.
Nominations from the floor for chair.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
In my opinion only, you're doing an excellent job. So are you willing to take on this responsibility for another year?
Well, it would be for 6 months till the term is up. I would do what the board wishes, but quite frankly, I'm getting a little bit long in the tooth. I just as soon someone else step forward. I can no longer bring my dog with me as a comfort dog into the city offices, so I would serve if called, I guess, but I just as soon not. Thank you. So, are there any nominations for the office of chair? Board Member Lawrence?
I would like to nominate Board Member Holmdahl.
Board Member Holmdahl is nominated.
Do we need seconds on these?
No.
Okay.
You can nominate yourself. Those are the rules.
I don't feel the need.
Okay. Any other nominations? So the nomination for the chair is closed, and call for a vote.
Okay, voting on Brandy Homdahl to become chair. Homdahl?
Yes.
Paquette?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
And Chair Jaffa?
Yes.
Thank you, that nomination is approved.
And I think I would pass the gavel at this point, or continue the election.
Oh, no, you can continue.
All right, so we have just on procedure, the election for vice chair.
Mr. Chair, coming from a family who has a lot of girl power, I'd like to see Ms. Paquette continue as vice chair. So I nominate her.
Thank you, Carl.
Well spoken. Any other nominations? So nominations for vice chair is closed after the vote.
Okay, voting on the nomination to appoint Linda Paquette as vice chair. Homdahl?
Yes.
Paquette?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
And Chair Jaffa?
Yes.
That nomination is approved.
Item 3, discuss having a renewable energy fair. This is something that's been on the topic off and on for a number of years, and I think when Chair Snyder was here with a little bit more, there was a little more enthusiasm than during my tenure. If Board Member Paquette knows quite a bit about this, I think.
I wonder if it shouldn't morph, though, into something a little different, maybe. For example, we've got an awful lot of heat pumps that have been installed. We have a bunch of solar installations now as well. I wonder if putting together I mean, we'd have to get the homeowners' agreement on these things, but I wonder if having a map that, you know, showed the different installations so people could go see what they look like, and, you know, a little write-up about each one, maybe what it cost, what the output is. I don't know. I feel like we have been kicking this renewable energy fair thing down the road for a while, and I think it's because it needs to morph into something a little different than in the past. Those are my thoughts.
Sure, Jaffa. Remember when we started discussing it, the start of COVID, and the APTEC was closed, and talked about bringing it back in there, but then everything, COVID happened and pushed everything, so I think that's why it got kicked down the road a little bit. So.
I think that's right. I think everything, the last 2020 was a lost year, 2021 was a slight recovery, and I don't think we got our feet under us completely yet. But the idea of an energy fair in Seward is not a bad idea, quite frankly, with the projects we're going to talk about, maybe some today and in the future. I frankly see Seward as the alternative energy capital of Alaska. And I don't see any reason why a fair couldn't be held of some sort to praise ourselves. That's not the word, but toot our own horn. So I think it's a little, this is not the time for it, probably. I think we have some other things in front of us. But I think probably towards the end of, or middle of the summer, well, before our hiatus, we might be able to schedule something for the fall.
I have just a
Please.
question. Who was the driving force behind it in 2017? Was it a community advisory group or a Does anybody know who put the whole thing together back in 2017?
Do you remember?
I have contact information. I believe it was professionally organized outside of Seward. I can get that information. But and I guess along those lines too, I'd like, add that in the comment. We have discussed, with COVID, obviously it did push this to the sidelines, but the highlighting the installations is is something I would support. But I'm just looking at this, this great sponsor list, and it was fun when it lasted. But one of the complaints that I kind of picked up from the vendors was they weren't getting return on investment. It's a big deal to pack up and come down here and set up, and they didn't feel like they were getting the throughput. So almost, with what we did with getting the solar online, and I know heat pumps are slowly or rapidly, depending on how you look at it, proliferating around the city. Like a lot of these things have been accomplished. It's definitely worth revisiting, but it's a big deal, and I feel like we need somebody that has the capacity to take this on. Chamber.
No, Board Member Smith, I think you're exactly right. This is when Board Member Paquette and I and former Chair Snyder would talk, and we'd gather information or hear information. There's a myriad of groups out there, and it's almost overwhelming. I spoke just a little earlier today with Mary Tugas about this same problem. She is in favor of this kind of activity, but who's going to do the speaking? I mean, we've got the Blue Pipeline, Solarized Seward, on and on and on, and they're all doing good work, but it's almost overwhelming. And I think if people feel that it's too big a topic, they're going to be put off. So having somebody drive the train, a local focal point, I think that's got to be developed. I don't know if it's a chamber. I don't know if it's an organization, a grassroots organization. There's nothing wrong with grassroots organizations. So. But I don't know that it's something that PACAB has a capacity to organize. Maybe they do. Okay.
So what do we do?
So we discussed that. There was no action needed. Has everybody discussed it? All right, next topic. Review the Lowell Point Sewage Lagoon. We asked for this report, and I see Mr. Schlossler is here, and I don't know if you're familiar with this report, but it was something that the residents in the Lowell Point area were concerned with, and others. And now we have the report to look at.
Chairperson Job,
Please.
point of order. I'm seeking clarification. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, but I'm seeking clarification. We work at behest of the City Council, is that not correct?
Correct.
Have they passed this on asking us to do anything with this? Or are we just assuming that we should?
Pardon me, Master.
Yeah, so you guys requested a report, and that's what we're bringing back before you. You passed it on. I know we didn't have the last meeting. It was supposed to be at the last meeting. Council has also seen this report, but you asked for it, and we have to bring it back before you. That's why we bring it before you now.
We had some people speak at the podium asking PACAB to take a look at this.
Yes, I know. I'm aware of that.
That's where that came from. I don't know that Council has this before them. They do have this before them. Yeah. So it would be within our purview to make comments.
I remain concerned about this lagoon from the standpoint of its size and its dysfunction. It's not really functioning well right now, and we're down to probably the lowest population numbers we have. So, and I know that, there's recommendations in here of things to do. I remain concerned, however, that as we talk about expanding the bench, expanding forest acres, bringing in more housing, bringing in more residents, that we're already at a threshold where we're having problems. And so I just really want to encourage administration to consider identifying a location and pursuing supplemental, if you know, if that's the word you want to use, as opposed to replacement. It's like the biggest piece of infrastructure we have, really, when you think about it, in terms of health and safety of our population. And if you get to a point where you can't provide the healthy removal of brown water from the residents, then now you can't get anybody to come here either, right? I mean, so, and again, I believe that there's federal money going to be available for these kinds of infrastructure things, and so I just think it's so timely with the money available that we should be looking at it. I mean, we need to fix what we have, but I really encourage us to continue to consider looking for growth.
Other comments?
Yeah, I would just like to echo that. If you look on page 63 or page 7, I think it's important under the discussion section to look at the fact that a lot of this is based on slow population growth for this foreseeable future. And as we as a community are looking at ways to expand residential areas, we need to make sure that that it's kept as part of the conversation. Because if that does, if we're making strides in that area, we're obviously going to hopefully have a quicker increase in population growth, and just to make sure it remains part of that conversation.
Well, this topic, if I might, this topic came because of some complaints. And the complaints are based on people's perception of the situation. And one of those is a smell. And I lived next door to a coffee company at one time, which you'd think was wonderful, but it wasn't. So it's a little bit relative in how that aroma, how people deal with it. I think it's clear from this report that the facility is within operating parameters, but just barely. And that if we're going to look at other problems in this community, we have more jobs than we have people. So if we're going to bring in people, those people are going to add to that problem. So I don't think there's any question that along with other utilities in the city, it's going to have to be looked at. And if an expansion happens to the north of town, it may be that a new facility entirely is going to be have to be looked at. But I think those are big topics, and frankly, I'm not one to count the federal money yet. But we certainly need to make plans as if it were there, because if we don't have the plans, we'll never get it done. So I think the city has heard that this is a problem, and you know the valued residents that live at Lowell Point need to be heard, and the future needs of Seward need to be addressed. So I think everybody's in the same plate. It's just how quickly it's going to happen. But the issues about how it can be improved in the short term, I'm sure the utility manager is looking at that report, and there's probably some expense with blowers and things that are required that'll have to be figured out. Any other comments on the Lowell Point? Okay. So we have Phil Calussa's letter in here, and most of you remember his presentations over the time, which have been always appropriate, I think, and informative. And in fact, deserves a lot of credit for moving the city towards the electrical bidirectional meters and other things. To move a goal from 2,000 to 50 is maybe a reality check, but maybe build the other way, from the bottom up, and find the momentum on how that goes. How the city supports these things, I think, is a really interesting problem. I talked just a little while ago to Mary Tugas about the library heat pump, if you will, in a general heat pump topic. The cost of electricity at the library is one of the driving factors for making it a difficult project. So where does the city come with supporting valuable things for the community? I'm a little bit too conservative to think that we should expect the city or any government agency to bail us out of everything. But providing the mechanism, or at least removing obstacles, I think is something definitely that can be looked at. And if it means adjustment of rates towards a greater return in the long run, that needs to be looked at too. I'm not gonna suggest that this is an easy topic, and you know, the heat pump is the same thing. We're talking about a subsidy towards encouraging people to do something that maybe is in their best interests. But not everybody can just act on their best interests. It costs money. So how do you get people to do that? That's, I think, what Mr. Calusa's suggestion is, how to get there. Board Member Humble.
I'm new to the discussion, and we've heard reference to this 2019 resolution that was passed by this body, and I'm just wondering if anybody has the history of what happened once we passed that resolution. Did it go on to the city council, and if so, what was the response?
I don't think the manager's here, so Rob is out of state, he's be back. But I know this is on his radar to do the rebate program. It's on there, but he's been busy with the failing infrastructure, getting out the bonds and stuff. So it is, he told me it is there. I know, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were talking about it. It is on his radar to get this done. I just don't know the time frame. But I know that it is in their radar, so.
My guess with Manager Morrow in there, or Montgomery in there, it'll happen quicker than the bidirectional meter. So I think we'll probably have to bring that back, unless Mr. Calusa, if you have anything you want to add at this point to that.
I mean, to me, the rebate is just helping share some of the risk for a new technology that we think is beneficial for the people, for the utility, and for the environment. And I'm just looking to help break that risk factor a little bit down, so people are more inclined to do what I think might be the way to go.
There's a stability in energy field is the name of the game. And if electrical use increases because of heat pumps, that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. How you get that electricity, I mean, you got to deal with that. But stability in use in any energy is the way to go. And the electrical load right now does fluctuate a lot in Seward. And more heat pumps would tend to, Board Member Smith, I think I'm correct in that, would tend to stabilize that.
Well, it certainly adds to it, so they could count on those future electrical sales. I think that was part of the discussion. Kind of anecdotally, this last couple power outages, I installed 2 of them myself, and just watching them, you know, kick on when the power comes back, that's something that the utility will have to address too, because the peak demands can be really high. But it's, you know, they've been keeping my house warm with 0 degrees out, so, and that's air source too, not anything fancy.
There's a little bit of an issue with supply, however.
Right.
Because I know I contacted Darien, I don't know, a month or two ago, and there aren't any available.
They're all made across the ocean there and
Yeah,
bottlenecked up, so
yeah.
that's a good point.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I will throw in my Buy America thing. I think any of you that have the opportunity to encourage our American manufacturers, like it used to be all the name brand, Crane and everything else was U.S. I have my share of Hitachi and Mitsubishi stuff too. But, we now see the what is it, the bird has come back. I forget what that's called, but back to the roost. We see what we bought. We sent our industries overseas, and now we can't buy heat pumps easily. But it may be just a matter of time till that swings around again. Having the basis to allow the system to the purchases to go on, I think that's really what we need to do.
So Norm, are you saying that we don't really need to do anything probably, that Rob has got this on his agenda, and that even though we haven't seen any action, that some kind of a rebate program is in the works?
I believe he was working on it. I believe he was working on it with Phil and some other folks, maybe.
Can we ask the administration to have Rob present at a future meeting in the near future?
Absolutely. Just to reiterate what the harbor master said, so I believe Mr. Kaluza and Director Montgomery have met several times on this topic. It's something the electric utility director is definitely has, to use Norm's words, on his radar. It is a question of priorities. As Norm mentioned, right now we've got 5 major infrastructure rebuild projects that are on the radar that have been fairly all-consuming, and I think we would all agree are of a very urgent importance. This is definitely something that Rob has discussed as well as we look forward to future rate studies, which we know we're going to need to do in the future, and this is definitely something that needs to be incorporated into that. So it's very much on the radar. If you guys would like, if the board would like to have an update from the utility director, I don't think that that's a problem. It's not the most pressing issue, but it's definitely on the radar. And like I said, I believe if you want to have Mr. Kaluza mentioned, but I believe they've met several times to discuss this project, and yeah. And if we could suspend the rules so I could ask a question from Mr.
Please
Kaluza.
do.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Going back to board member Paquette's question, I was a citizen in Juneau when they launched their rebate program, and I think one of the findings was that this issue needs to be looked at holistically, because a rebate program was put into place, but unfortunately there was no vendors that were available, or an insufficient number of vendors that were available to install them. What's the status of providers in the Seward community that are able to install heat pumps?
Actually, Seward probably has the one and only most experienced heat pump installer in the Kenai Peninsula at the moment. So we do have a certified licensed installer to install and service these heat pumps, which is kind of exceptional. And you're right, 10 years ago, those people didn't exist. Juneau's got probably a dozen of them now, where before, like you're saying, they had none. So I think we're sitting good. We just need to keep the ball rolling and stop kicking the can.
Thank you.
If I might, close that to Phil, was that installer have any training at Avtech?
Yeah, I mean, it's Darien with double D's, and he went through the plumbing and heating, and then he went through the refrigeration training, and ultimately got his, I forgot what the contract the status is of your licensing business, but he's fully ready, and he's young and energetic, and we all have a lot to learn.
Avtech is another real benefit we have towards this thing. Okay. Is that covered? a review of Bill's letter. I thank you again for the efforts and your participation as a citizen and certainly as a in this particular field. Really appreciate it. All right. Informational items and reports. I think we've been through that. And now we'll come to citizen comments. And again, I really appreciate the audience we have today. I wonder what it is we're talking about that drew you all here. I don't know if we're going to hear it now or not, but it doesn't matter. If you come here and hold us to our job of trying to advise the council, that's what we're here to do. So any of us are approachable, I think, and appreciate comments that would help the community. You guys often know better than anybody else, people who aren't in appointed or elected positions. Mr. Calusa.
If I could just make one more on the renewable energy conference deal. I know it was the Chamber of Commerce that sort of had some funding to have us do those several that we did. And they were a lot of fun and informative. I think to me my big topic would be, and Cordova did it just before the COVID deal. It was kind of electrified Cordova. The utility sort of sponsored it and said, hey, here's electric cars, here's electric lawnmowers, here's heat pumps, here's all the electric things that we can be doing to be limiting our consumption of oil and stuff. And I think that might not be a bad topic to really kind of focus on. And whether it's, EV stations for your house, what's it take to put one in? Nobody knows. And maybe we can have an EV car or two kind of deal, and some lawnmowers and snow blowers and all that stuff. So that would be my suggestion for kind of moving forward with some limited little conference. And it's something we could do this spring even, so thanks.
Any other? Thank you.
Hi, Casey. I will let you all know how it goes in installing a charging port at my house. I am in the process of transferring over to an electric vehicle and just had my charging port delivered yesterday. So keep you guys updated on how that goes.
Cindy Eppin in town. On the municipal lands inventory and management plan, the Planning and Zoning Commission made their recommendations. We worked on it at several work sessions, and we made those recommendations via resolution 2021-016, and it was passed by the Planning and Zoning on August 3rd of 2021. Besides the property up on the bench, there were other parcels in town owned by the city that we changed from hold on to, maintain, keep it the same way, to residential. So it's like a 60-page document. It'll take a while to look at, but I would encourage you to look at it. And then I'll also talk to Jason about it to make sure what happened to it, because I searched the city council records and I didn't see a resolution approving it, but it definitely passed P&Z. So I think it's a strike through and underlying, regular change that the council was asked to look at, but it should be available for you to look at now. Thank you.
Okay. I asked the clerk if you could get us a link to that document.
Yep, you got it.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from public? So board member administration comments. What's the typical format? The board first and then the administration?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll just go across the table. Newly elected President Mondal.
This is my first official meeting. We did the work session last month, and I'm excited to be back in Seward and participating. And it's great to see so many people here. And I really appreciate everybody who takes the time to come and sit and listen or speak. It really helps a lot to get that input from other people. So thank you all for taking the time to do that.
Vice Chair Paquette.
Thank you. Congratulations to Brandy. Thank you to everybody that came, even if you didn't speak. It's nice to have people in the audience paying attention. Phil, thank you for bringing the rebate program back, and thank you for keeping on with it, right? You do keep kicking the can so that we don't forget. Thank you for working with Rob to get it to a point where it comes back to council. Casey, thank you for bringing the heat loop project back up. So council took that off their priority list. Is that right, Brenda? Or Stephen?
It's on the, if I may, it's on the our 6-year capital improvement plan list.
It's still there.
It's on the
Okay.
CIP list. It's not
Okay.
on the legislative priorities list,
Okay.
but our CIP list has been provided to our state lobbyist, our federal lobbyist, R&M Engineering, and R&M also provides grant writing services. And so it is an item that they're looking for. A comment was made earlier about infrastructure funding to match up, and all the items on the CIP list are items that we're pursuing funding from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The one item of note, though, just to clarify there, is that bipartisan infrastructure bill is a 5-year outlay of funding, and we still don't have detailed guidance on that yet, and so we're not in a position to actually pursue any specific grants. But yes, it is. That's still an item that we're pursuing. And also, just the other item I would make note of is there's going to be an update in the CMR in the city manager's report in the next council meeting packet regarding the heat loop program. We've requested an additional 3-month extension from ADA. Looks favorable that we'll receive that, but that's where that project is at.
Great. So thank you, Casey, for bringing that. Cindy, thank you for the land maps. That's great information. And Lori, thank you so much for your actual long list of items. That was really great work there. As we all know, I remain concerned about the lagoon and the growth, right? I really want Seward to be able to grow, but I want us to do it so that we can all be happy as it's happening. Over.
Carl?
Yes, well, first off, I want to thank everybody that came, and I do appreciate both the reports and the citizens that were willing to stand up and tell us about what their concerns were and sort of give us a boot a little bit. I appreciate that a lot. And I want to thank all the board members that are currently present. Hopefully we'll get a lot done this new year. Chair Jaffa, thank you very much for your service. I know you're still a board member, but thank you for standing in for a while, and congratulations, Ms. Heimdall. So. And Happy New Year, everyone.
And thanks, congratulations to our new chair and re-elected vice chair. And thanks to the committee that provided their support today. There was definitely some very topical issues that it's nice to have those brought back up. I feel like we did a lot of good work on our priorities list here. This is a very concise, targeted list of things that I think we'll be able to do a good job on this year. So nothing else. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'll try to keep this brief, and I've already thanked the audience. I won't do that again, but I will say that it's noteworthy that the city administration, our city manager, our city mayor, our new president of PACAP are all of the fair gender. I was raised among strong women. I worked for a strong woman that built a statewide construction business. My fellow member, Mr. Hughes, had a tremendously strong wife, so we all know what women can do. So we're looking forward to a bright future in that regard. While I have the opportunity now, I will say that This last week has been an education for me, following Assistant Manager Zoll's request, digging into the problems with employment. I talked to a number of civic leaders here in town, and this is no small issue. This is something that if we don't address forcefully and probably quickly, this can stifle the bright future we have in Seward. I've developed this little metaphor about we've planted a flower that's grown into a very pretty flower. If we don't continue to water it, it's going to wither. We have the 4th of July creek, we have infrastructure, we have new projects in the electrical system. We have a dynamic, I think, in city administration. We need to give them the direction to move us where we can solve this housing, I'm saying housing, this employment, recruitment, and retention problem. Everybody I talked to started with the idea of it's housing, housing, housing. Well, that's great. I also talked to labor people. Well, I want to build housing. Our local builder is booked a year out. He can't find people to build houses, besides the cost of it. Labor sources that would bring people into town need places to put people. It's a myriad of problems that really needs to be addressed as a whole. But I think we can do it as long as we work together as a team. And hopefully over the next 2 months we can listen to people's ideas that have faced this problem or have run into it and are roadblock. With that, I also take a look at the 2013 plan. This same plan talked about the problems with housing or potential housing. So this is not a new problem. We've just come up to a point where we can't kick that can down the road much further. And it may be an opportunity in our build back from COVID and 2020, and I don't need the United States government necessarily, but right here, the citizens of Seward have a big responsibility. When the Gold Gate Bridge got built, it was built by the citizens of San Francisco, not by the federal government. It was built by people that pledged their houses in bond issues, mortgages. We may have to face up to that. If you've got it good, that's great, but it won't stay good if your neighbor is starving. Along with this week, I talked to several people, including our former chair, Mr. Schaefermeyer, former manager, Schaefermeyer, former director of Alaska Sea Life Center, Schaefermeyer, son of Mr. Schaefermeyer, who married my wife and I. So Daryl brought up his advocacy for the heat pump project, which has a lot of benefits. Economic benefits. Carbon, yeah, I got it. Carbon, great. Economic benefits is what drives the train. The other is the long-term but hopeful benefit is the Lowell Canyon Hydro. I spoke at the last meeting, or December 13th or whatever it was, and there's been a response from the administration that the funding, as we've heard from Steve, that the funding for one of these projects has been requested to be extended. The other project, there's still life in that. To get these to move, we really need concurrence of the people of Seward. Because it shouldn't be just a board of people here, it should be the community that wants this stuff. So we need to beat the bush to find support for these things. And I personally think it's there, and particularly if we can show the benefit. So, with that, I would ask the clerk, I give these, the Representative Eklund had given us these maps, if these can go out to board members. And other than that, it's been a pleasure serving both on this board and as chair. But I just as soon sit back and let somebody else do the talking. Okay.
Nothing further to add.
Administration? No? Did I talk it out? Okay, well, yes, sir.
Okay, I want to congratulate the new Chair Holmdahl and Vice Chair Paquette. Just to let you know too, so the chamber's going to be putting 2 charging stations eventually. I know it's on there, it's going to be happening. And just also let you know, so we're doing that Northeast Launch Ramp project, and we put in 2 green parking stalls for plug-ins, which is going to be paid for by Exit Marine. They're going to put in the 2 charging stations for vehicles that are towing boats. So that's going to be part of the project. So there's 2 going in there. I know there's some plug-ins on Alameda and across the bay that Exit Marine has put in. So that, and I know you mentioned Mr. Schaefer-Meyer. I know he was there, and we were working on him to get the extension for the heat loop project. So it's not dead in the water. It's moving forward. Just waiting for the extension to go through. And, you know, like I said, we've got polar bear coming up. Everybody be safe. It's going to start raining next week, so it's going to be slippery. So just wear your ice cleats around. That's it. Thank you.
A question for Brenda.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Brenda, when the gentleman had put in for PACAB, the mayor told me that we were going to wait and see how those seatings went and how that people's schedules were before taking up the idea of opening these meetings up to be able to be attended by Zoom. Now that he has stepped off because he can't be here physically, what's the next step for getting that brought forward to council for approval? I mean, how do we move that forward?
If PACAB as a body wants to develop a resolution to present to council and request that of council, this body can do that and present it to council.
Okay. And so when would we do that? We would put it on our agenda to discuss at the next meeting?
It would be advisable for someone, a board member of PACAB, to develop a resolution to present to this body for approval.
Okay.
And then from there,
It would go to
forward to council for approval.
So if one of us were to do that for the next meeting.
Any
and
member
get-
of this
okay.
body can
Sounds good.
sponsor a
Thank you.
resolution.
Thank you, because I think we need to do that. I really do.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I don't think we have anything else. I do think that with the things that we've got on our table, we may be looking at longer meetings than the 1-hour meeting.
Right.
And I don't know how difficult that's going to be for everybody. I know Board Member Smith had some obligations, and today Board Member Lawrence had to go. We may have to face that and see what we can do. Okay? That's it. Adjourned.
Quick questions again.